How's it going, Twitch? My name is Skull, and on behalf of East Asia Soft, welcome to today's stream. Today is Sunday, which means that it's time for me to continue my playthrough of SeaBed, a Yuri visual novel. And I have no idea what's going on, but I am having fun playing through this game, trying to figure it out. So, at the end of the last stream, Sane had just given Takako a ghost story about people who had forgotten who they were and disappeared. I said my goodbyes to Sane and left the room. Sane, still waving at me, disappeared behind the door. Wearing only my short sleeves, I felt the corridor to be somewhat chilly. The nighttime cold of the mountains seeped in through the transparent windows. I shoved my hands into my pockets and continued down the corridor. A strong gust of wind rattled the windows, startling me. Glancing at the window, I saw only the reflections of myself and the door behind me. I thought back to Sane's story and wondered if I should check the doors of all the rooms on my way back, just for the heck of it. All the doors had the same design, and their knobs were identical. There was a small gap between the door and the floor. The faint light in the corridor was not enough to fully illuminate it. It almost felt as if the darkness was slithering out of the rooms through it. The window rattled behind me again. Brought back to reality by that sound, I gave up on looking at the doors. I reached the spiral staircase and ascended to my floor. Temperatures began to rapidly fall, starting with that night. Around midnight, the wind rattled my window so bad I half expected it to break open. It made me jump out of the bed, reminding me of what Mayuko and Sane said about the wind around this time of the year. I wondered what would become of the leaves on the tree I saw through Sane's window. There was no way they could withstand wind this strong. I got back to my bed and turned to my side in the fetal position. Making sure not to accidentally open any gaps on my back, I closed my eyes. The temperature suddenly dropped the next morning, just like Mayuko and Sane had warned. Oh, and Sane also caught a cold. Poor girl. Holding the folded towel by its two ends, I gave it a hard wring. The water it had absorbed dripped down into the basin below. I placed the cool, wet towel on the forehead of the feverish Sane. Guess we're at the turning point of seasons. It was really cold yesterday, too. Sane blinked a few times instead of a reply. You're still feeling out of it? Guess it's going to be a rice gruel or something along those lines for lunch then. I'll have Mayuko bring you some. Aren't you bored? Yeah, it's a shame we can't talk much, but it still beats being cooped up in my room. I made a long yawn. When I opened my eyes, I saw Sane staring right at me. I couldn't sleep that well yesterday. Or, you should sleep. I'm going to be fine, said Sane in a small voice. I'm good. Sane regarded me for a few moments, then finally closed her eyes. Do you want me to read you something? Rather, I'd like to hear the continuation of your story. Which one? The story about your trip. The one you didn't finish last time. Ah. Yes, another one of Takako and Sachiko's trips. After filling our stomachs in the port, we rented ourselves a car. During our test ride along the seashore, I spotted a flock of seagulls flying above the sea. The wind's pretty strong here. I like towns with strong wind. It lifts my spirits. Once the traffic light dangling above the road changed to green, we made our turn and returned to town. The well-kempt steering wheel felt right at home in my grip, while the neatly polished front window gave me a clear and beautiful view of the scenery. As we rode up a hill, all we could see was the horizontal line of the asphalt and the clear blue sky stretching above it. I spotted a few woolly clouds drifting across it. Eventually, we reached the top. This looks like San Francisco. Our red rental car returned to a horizontal position, but it lasted only a few moments, and we were soon on our way downhill. This time I could see the azure sea and a port in the distance, surrounded by colorful houses and some woodlands. Wow! The uneven terrain made the city even more scenic, letting you observe it from a variety of angles. As I looked down at the slope, I spotted some pink and white flowers growing by the side. The stone-paved road extending before our car cut through what seemed like a garden of sorts. The thick greenery higher up prevented me from seeing the end of the road. Okay! Releasing the brakes and promptly shifting to acceleration, I began to make my way down. Through the window of the passenger's side, Sachiko gazed out at the colorful flowers as they danced, her own hair wildly fluttering in the wind. Definitely San Francisco. There was a huge and gorgeous Art Deco-style bridge connecting the port and the neighboring town further down the road. The two towers supporting the bridge were so huge it felt almost like they were touching the sky. I leaned forward to have a better look, but the rearview mirror sparkled in the sun, momentarily blinding me in one eye. The setting sun painted the western sky orange while making the ocean waves appear like brilliant, sparkling gold. The waves reached all the way to the bridge, lending a golden hue to its lower part as well. The towers appeared to almost be melting in the sky as that golden glow embraced their edges, and the sun began sinking deeper below the horizon, painting the entire scenery orange. I'm really glad it didn't rain today. Yeah. Our drive across the suspension bridge started with observing how the madder red structure was slowly taking on darker hues. Whatever. I began singing a song, humming the parts where I'd forgotten the words. It made Sachiko smile and comment on how old it was. Whew! After spinning the wheel so much, it's nice to finally have a relaxing straight road to drive on. I straightened my arms and my back. Do you want me to drive on the way back? No need, I'm good. Click. I changed gears and stepped on the gas a bit harder. A classical rock song began blaring on the radio when I pressed a button on it, the kind you'd hear all the time these days. I lowered the sound a little. I wonder if that's mist. Sachiko, who was looking at the Gulf from the window, pointed at the cars ahead of us. Their lights were about to disappear into some haze. It looked like the wind swept some mist our way from the Gulf. It swiftly covered the water below the bridge and was now rising up to where we were. It had already covered most of the road. Are you going to be okay? I can see the cable, so it shouldn't be a problem. The white, dense mist hid the road in front of us like a cloud. All we had was the orange-red cable to guide our way. Durr! We drove across a vanilla-covered cloud with our eyes fixed on the cable extending from one of the towers. If I woke up in a place like this, I'd think I was dreaming for sure. Yeah. Our car drove over the clouds. The sun dipped behind a golden-tinted cloud in the westward sky. You think we're going to be okay? What do you mean? At this rate, the road might very well lead us straight to Wonderland. Or heaven. Sachiko gave the scenery in front of us a look before glancing back at me with a gentle smile. I wouldn't mind that. As the wind picked up, our car was swallowed by the surrounding mist. I pulled the switch next to the wheel and made our headlights blink. The mist reflected their golden glow. For a while, I observed the spreading clouds and the high towers peeking out from behind them, until I heard the abrupt sound of a horn. Oh! Honk! Honk! Even after I floored the gas pedal, the sound continued to echo across the mist. Sachiko looked out the window and listened in. I think it's the horn of a ship. It's coming from below. I wonder if it's signaling its place so it doesn't collide with anyone else. I decelerated to our previous speed and made our tail lamps blink as well. Sachiko lowered the volume of the radio. Now I could definitely tell the sound was coming from below. Honk! Honk! There are all sorts of sounds in the world, huh? I returned my gaze to the towers, peeking out from behind the veil of mist. After a few more honks, the mist cleared up, and we continued onwards. I could see the same blue sedan in front of us. Before we realized it, the sun had already set. Been there. Taken many road trips where the sun set before I didn't even realize. That wasn't the end of that chapter, was it? Nope. Okay. The moment I left the room, the chilly air outside made me shiver. Groaning, I wrapped my arms around myself. I suddenly realized it was exactly what my grandmother used to do. The black window frames rattled, making the corridor feel even colder. On the other side of them loomed a sky, lightly covered by clouds. The camphor tree in the yard continued to sway in the wind, shedding some of its leaves in the process. I followed the leaves with my eyes while turning toward the east wing. I could hear the sound of a knife hitting a chopping board. Mayuko was busy with preparing lunch behind my back. Not minding her, I kept my eyes on the small pot in front of me. Chopped vegetables and rice were being steamed together. The shredded radish and carrots, the sliced shiitake mushrooms, the chopped onions, and the rice gruel were all gently wobbling in there. I think it's starting to boil over again. It should be done about now. I scooped up a small portion and put it in my mouth. It's hot, but good. Can I have a taste too? I think the taste is a bit strong though. Mayuko came over and opened the lid, her expression instantly clouding over. Did you put curry in this? Just a little. The taste is too strong, said Mayuko after putting some of it in her mouth. You think so? It's not good for someone who just got over a fever. The room we were using for the cafeteria had a long blackwood table with several chairs around it. How they managed to bring that table into the room was a mystery to me, though. Sitting in one of the chairs was a certain someone with fluffy hair. I circled around the table, set down my tray, and sat in front of her. Long time no see. How are you doing? That's a dumb question. It's Kosue. How do they know each other? Why? I'm here because I'm not doing well. Well, that's true in most cases, but there are exceptions to everything, right? Wait, she's a patient? She's a patient? Kozue furrowed her brows as I removed the lid from the pot. Want to have a taste? I asked, but Kozue shook her head. I haven't seen you in a while. Where have you been? Nowhere special. I wonder if we just missed each other then. Perhaps I was avoiding you. I felt something pierce my heart just now. Doesn't seem like it was much of a fatal injury for you, though. That's because I'm headstrong. Kozue placed the cup with water on the table. Are you in a bad mood? Maybe I can help if there's something on your mind. I'm okay. On the tray before her rested a bowl of rice, a plate with sweet and sour pork, some broiled fish, and a single strawberry. There was also a bowl of carrot and some bean goma-ai salad next to the tray. Goma-ai. Kozue picked up an okra with her chopsticks and put it in her mouth. Was that okra tasty? It was okay. I don't like sticky stuff, which is why I'm not a fan of the mountain potatoes here. I think I saw you eating natto earlier. I love natto. You're like a little child. Hey, natto's good for you. Is there nothing you don't like, Kozue? No. I see. I scooped up a spoonful of rice gruel. It had already cooled off to the perfect temperature. The taste of curry was a bit strong, though. Kozue ate her food with almost machine-like precision. The wind rattled the window. I looked behind me and gazed outside through the large window. The cloudy sky made the interior of the room darker than usual. The lights inside suddenly blinked. I looked up at the ceiling. They're acting funny again, and we just changed them the other day. I wonder if the age of this building is the problem. Maybe there's something off with the wiring. The ones at the lobby stairway were acting up too. Mayuko said she might have to change them again. Ah, that's right. I took out a piece of cardboard from my pocket and handed it to Kozue. What's this? An invitation from Mayuko. That's your handwriting, though. The card had a fantastic illustration of stars and clouds drawn on it. The date and time are written below that. She asked me to write it. Is that for Christmas? Yes. It's been a while, so we're all getting together and having dinner together. Make sure not to be late. What if I don't go? The food will go to waste. And what's this about a dress code? It's a party. If you don't have a dress, I can lend you mine. Kozue finished her final piece of fish with what little rice she still had left, then gulped down her remaining miso soup. Well, I'm full. You're going already? I addressed her as she picked up her tray. She cocked her head to the side, simply nodding. It's been cold lately, so be careful. I addressed her back while scooping out another spoonful of curry gruel. Christmas party, huh? I could hear a faint sound coming from Sane's room. Listening to a set of familiar words, I opened her door. Aww. Sane was lying on her bed, holding a book. Her face was turned towards the window. The window was slightly open, its curtains languidly fluttering in the faint wind. The music of my childhood reverberated across the walls. Sane didn't react to my entry. As I drew closer, I realized that her eyes were closed and her breathing was even. I closed the window, careful not to make a sound. I moved closer to the shelf with the record player and checked the label of the record set down next to it. The cover wasn't the one I was familiar with, but it was most certainly the song I hummed during that trip I told Sane about. I spent a couple of moments listening to the melody. As the song began nearing its end, I looked down at the shelf below in search of the notebook I'd forgotten in her room. Sane's shelves seemed to have changed slightly from the last time I saw them. She must have returned a lot of her books to the library, as most of the available space was now taken up by the records, with only a few lonely books left at the edges of the shelf. The leftover books seemed ancient. Their covers were pretty much falling apart. They must have been her old favorites or something. Some were meticulously patched up with tape and adhesive. Most of them seemed to be related to illness, including The Ugly Duckling, a book most hospitals had on their shelves. I spotted a few thinner volumes, some newer novels, as I inspected one book after another. And when I'd forgotten what I was looking for, I suddenly found my notebook. I gave it a thorough look. It had the familiar brown leather cover. Upon closer realization, I realized the cover was no cheap knockoff one could see on most notebooks. This was likely the real deal. I sat down in the cane chair and opened up the notebook. I'd already discussed it with Mayuko. She said it was addressed directly to me, so I was free to do whatever I wanted with it. Upon flipping the first page, I saw some handwritten letters. That said, they were neat and easy to read, in no way inferior to print. As I examined the date, I realized that a few pages between the first and the cover were torn out. They were removed with such precision I didn't even notice at first. I quickly flipped to the end of the notebook to check if no other pages were missing. I found myself intrigued by the missing contents, but the entries were all dated, so I figured I could just start reading from wherever I wanted. October 6th, 1979. Contrary to the forecast, the weather was beautiful today. The sky was blue with only a few light clouds to liven up its colors. To be completely honest, I spent pretty much every sports festival like that, even when it was a festival of another school. A nearby elementary school was holding its sports festival today. An upbeat song, the kind you usually hear during running competitions, began playing, followed by a sudden gunshot. Takako was excitedly looking at it from atop a jungle gym. "Look, it started," she addressed me. I could see that. Following her gaze, I saw a crowd of parents and children dashing through the field, stirring up a cloud of dust as they ran. A teacher's narration of the competition could be heard through the speaker atop a tall pole decorated with flags. Her loud voice was practically drowning out the music. I suddenly remembered how hot it was. 1979? Golly. So I guess this takes place like decades ago. The wind was stronger at the top of the slide, and we were in the shadow of a large tree, but due to how sunny it had been lately, this week's temperatures exceeded the average by a wide margin. I shifted my gaze to the book I'd been holding and tried once again to ignore the heat. I was here because I promised Takako to come if the weather was fine. Back when I made that promise, I already knew about the weather forecast and had completely forgotten about my sports festival curse. The view's great from here. Let's watch it together. We had a sports festival at our school last week. Is it really that entertaining to watch another school participate in one? Watching and participating are both fun in their own way. Really? As a participant, I was too busy being nervous and excited to really take it all in, and before long the whole thing was over. Being on the sidelines lets you calmly observe everything. I mean, even if you were in your house, you'd hear the sounds and get curious about how it's going, no? As we continued chatting atop the slide, Takako's friend, who went to buy juice earlier, came back. It was someone Takako met in her 4th year of school when she joined the basketball club. I saw her a couple times myself. Takako shouted something to her, then turned back to me. She wants all 3 of us to play. What do you think? I'll be reading my book here. Who's his friend? Alright, then we'll hang out around here. Takako slid down the slide. After that, I spent some time reading. Once I finished the chapter I'd been on, I closed the book and brushed some sweat off my forehead. Below me, Takako, her 2 friends, and some boy I'd never seen were playing kick tennis. I had no idea where they got that volleyball. A Gallup song burst forth from the speakers. It seemed like they started the ball toss game. For a while, I gazed absent-mindedly at the white and red balls dancing in the sky before realizing that I was feeling even hotter than before. The mild autumn breeze helped cool off my sweat-covered skin a little. I looked at the scoreboard and saw that the red team had 419 points while the white team had 503. Just then, a person appeared from the window and changed the red team's score to 460. On the track, they were still busy with the ball tossing game. I have trouble understanding how the scoring in that game is supposed to work. The clock between the scores was pointing at 11:45. It was almost time for lunch, and as I realized that, I smelled something good. I looked around the school grounds and spotted some of the families already helping themselves to an early treat. The Gallup song ended, and the ball baskets were lowered. The person on the speaker began counting each ball as they were tossed high into the air. As I observed the white and red balls painting wide arcs in the air, I felt the slide shake. A moment later, I heard some wails from below. Looking down, I spotted Takako clutching her head and writhing on the ground. I pushed the book back into my pocket and descended the stairs of the slide to give Takako a closer look. She was surrounded by her 2 friends and that boy I didn't know. "Are you okay?" asked one of her friends. Takako raised her upper body with a groan, her hands still on the back of her head. "Does it hurt?" It doesn't." I noticed something red seeping through her fingers. "You're bleeding." I realized there were also some red stains on her back and what looked like a puddle of blood about the size of my palm on the ground where she lay. One of the adults that saw the whole thing called an ambulance and it arrived before we knew it. I ended up having to accompany Takako to the hospital. Takako was lying limp on the ambulance's bed with a towel on her head. The adult who sat next to us listened to how she got hurt. From what I could piece together, it appeared she jumped up and clutched on the aerial ladder that was pretty high up, but her fingers slipped. She ended up turning upside down in the air and fell to the ground, hitting her head directly. Poor girl. Your stupidity knows no bounds. I'm bleeding all over. That's because you cut your head. I'm starting to feel the pain. Takako told the adults her home's phone number. Then she proceeded to look at the ceiling of the ambulance car. She couldn't move her head, so only her eyes darted anxiously from one spot to another. I might die. Relax. Worst case scenario, you'll get a few stitches. Her eyes stopped darting around and focused on me. Will you visit my grave if I die? I suppose I'd have to. I'm going to be lonely, so come visit me every day. No way, that sounds like a pain. Then at least drop by once in a while. I suppose that could work. After we reached the hospital, the doctors brought Takako to her room on a stretcher. I spent a few moments staring at the closed doors in the empty hallway, then sat down on the bench in front of the room. After a bit of time, I heard a sharp wail and some protests about needles or whatnot. Wait, I'm not ready yet. After a few minutes, I heard some irritated adult voices saying that she wasn't the only patient here. Yet even after that, the sounds of struggle wouldn't cease. I strained my ears and listened in. Judging from the voices and sounds, I guessed that she fought back against the nurses and doctors as they tried to hold her down. But as she was finally subdued and the needle came closer, she gave up and stopped struggling. The anesthetic must have worked, as I couldn't hear anything anymore. Takako's mother came to the hospital a few minutes later. She must have come directly from work, as she was still in her suit. After I explained to her everything that had happened, she looked around and entered Takako's room. I looked over her shoulder as she began speaking to the doctor to see Takako lying on the bed with her back to me in the center of the room. The doctor leaned over her and sewed her wound with something that looked like a nipper before I even had the time to react. The silver tray that Takako was leaning her head on was filled with crimson blood. You can stand up now. As the doctor said that, Takako began to slowly rise to her feet. The nurse wiped the blood off Takako's face while the latter kept staring into space with an empty expression. The doctor told Takako's mother not to scratch or wash the wound until it completely closes up. He then turned to Takako and repeated the same thing. After Takako's mother thanked the doctor, I helped Takako climb into her mother's car while she stayed behind for a bit more. Likely due to the anesthetic, Takako leaned against the rear seat's door and stopped moving altogether, almost like a squashed cockroach. Your head looks weird, I told her. The gauze bandages covering her wound were supported by a white net-looking thing that coiled around her entire head. It opened up at the top, making her hair stick out like a flower bulb. Takako simply let out a heavy sigh in response. Are you nervous? I gave her a hard look. After a few moments of silence, she opened her mouth. Everyone's going to make fun of me in school tomorrow. I think the fact that an ambulance car showed up at the sports festival is a much bigger event as far as everyone's concerned. Takako came to school the next day with the net still on her head, and everyone started calling her the flower bulb. However, when she could finally take it off the next week, she began bragging and showing her stitches to everyone as though it was some honorable wound. Sane's awake. I felt my head ache as I finished reading the entry. The pain itself was hardly anything noteworthy, but the way it prickled behind my eyes was annoying. It reminded me of having a fishbone stuck in your throat. I began massaging my eyes with my fingers when I suddenly realized Sane was up and looking at me. "Did I surprise you?" she asked. "No." My muscles tensed up at the idea of being observed without my knowledge, but luckily only my left hand, the one that held the notebook, twitched. I raised the notebook higher and showed it to Sane. "I was reading the diary." "Ah, the notebook from yesterday." "Did you read it without permission?" She glared at me with accusing eyes. I waved my hand in denial, which kind of reminded me of those comedians on TV. Discarding that thought, I proceeded to explain myself. "Looks like this thing really was addressed to me." "How can you tell?" "This diary belonged to my friend. It's pretty ancient, but there's stuff about me written in it. It doesn't belong to some random stranger. I'm sure she sent it to me so I would read it." I opened up the book on the first page and showed it to Sane. She looked at it through her glasses but seemed unable to make out the letters from that distance. "What is it about?" She gave up and leaned back against her pillow. "A story about how an ambulance car came to a sports festival." "What on earth happened?" "I cracked my head on the playground and ended up needing stitches." I carried the cane chair close to her bed. "The playground? So you didn't get hurt during the actual event?" I pulled my hair aside and showed Sane the back of my head. "Is it still there?" I think I can see a little bump or something." "I knew it would never disappear." I let go of my hair and sat back down into the chair. "Did you remember that event?" "I'm not sure. I vaguely recalled attending it when I read through the diary, but..." "I see." I realized the pain was gone. I pressed my fingers against my eyes again. Sane looked at me, so I hurriedly let go of them and opened the notebook. As I flipped through a few pages, Sane shifted her attention to the record player. I did the same. "Did you actually look for the record of this song?" I asked her. By now, the song had long since come to an end, and the record player was dead silent. The diary must have captured my attention so much that I didn't even notice. "I got curious about which song it was you mentioned during your story. Did I get it right?" "Yeah, hearing it again is really nostalgic. Can I raise the volume a little?" "Of course." I got off my chair and turned up the volume knob. I ended up chatting with Sane until dinner. The windows didn't rattle too much that day. The view outside looked still and serene with no wind. It reminded me of a picture you'd see on a postcard. Only a single dried up leaf kept fluttering on the tip of a branch. It was as though it was trying to fight against the onset of winter, despite looking like it would fall apart at any second. I feel like that's a metaphor. After finishing the conversation, I left Sane's room with notebook in hand. I had no other plans for the day, so I decided to return to my room. I sat down in the chair and was about to continue reading the diary when I remembered that odd pain behind my eyes. Remnants of it still seemed to linger in my mind. Rushing things would have been pointless, so I chose to close the notebook for now. I shut my eyes and leaned against the chair with all my weight. The pain vanished. It happened either when I closed my eyes or shortly afterwards. Now that the pain was gone, I felt cold. An unpleasant chill ran down my spine. I opened my eyes to check if the window was closed. I couldn't see it from my current position, so I stood up and walked closer. After pulling on it a few times, I fastened the latch. An odd pain behind her eyes, huh? Does that have to do... What did I press? I hit the fast forward button by accident. Anyway. As I reclined in my seat, I saw the window of my second floor room through the front glass. To the right of my room was Sane's, but her window was located on the other wall, so I couldn't see it from here. I sat up and opened the glove compartment. Inside, I found a pair of sunglasses, some pocket tissues, and a soft-cover book. I had nothing else to do, so I took out the sunglasses and tried putting them on. They had thick black frames. I turned the rear-view mirror toward myself. A small bag dangling from it touched my hand. I looked at it. It was made of some kind of thin material, like Japanese paper. There seemed to be something inside. As I placed it on my palm and held it up to the light, I saw something purple. It must have been the origin of the lavender smell in the car. Upon drawing it closer to my nose, I realized I was right. "What are you doing?" The door on the side of the driver's seat suddenly opened, startling me. Mayuko climbed into the car. "How does it look?" I looked at her from an angle and pointed at the sunglasses. "I feel like some thinner frames would suit you better." Can we really just go outside like this?" "I have permission." "Oh, that's good to hear." Upon checking that the ignition key was in its place, Mayuko promptly turned it. The car jerked for a moment, and the engine whirred to life with a loud low roar. Mayuko, who's the one giving you permission?" "The head doctor of the sanatorium. And when they're not present, the responsibility falls on the head nurse." "Isn't that you?" I gave her a suspicious look. "That's right. I'll be in a whole heap of trouble if you disappear on me, so be sure to stick close." "You don't need to tell me that." "Even if you find something interesting, don't wander off without first telling me. I'll accompany you if need be." "How old do you think I am?" Mayuko extended an arm to fix the position of the rearview mirror. In it, I saw the reflection of a woman with twin tails and sunglasses. "I'm looking good." "I'm really worried." Mayuko fastened her seatbelt. I returned the sunglasses to the glove compartment and fastened my seatbelt too. "Did you fasten your seatbelt?" "Yes." "We're off then." "Ah, it's Sane!" Probably drawn by the sound of the engine, Sane was looking at us through the corridor's window. She returned my wave with one of her own. Mayuko changed gears and began going in reverse. She then switched gears again and turned the steering wheel to the right, toward the gate. Meanwhile, I could hear the sharp screeching of the tires. Soon enough, I lost sight of Sane. "You think Sane will be fine on her own?" "Yes." "What happens if she gets hungry?" "I prepared a meal for her. Besides, there's all sorts of things left in the fridge." "I didn't know she could cook." "You're going to cook for us tomorrow, right?" "I guess I better do my best not to disappoint everyone." "Please do." "Okay." We're going into town. Why? The general store had a narrow parking area for about 4 cars, but it was already taken by a white truck bearing the store's name, a light green 2-door Datsun that looked more like a toy than a real car, and an elaborately decorated Toyota Crown. After changing gears multiple times, Mayuko finally managed to fit our car into the last open space left. "This is a different place than usual." The white concrete walls of the store loomed above the rest of the buildings. A series of large orange letters at the front spelled out its name. Most of the other buildings in the area were built in a traditional Japanese style, but this one looked more like a kind of highway motel you'd see in the U.S. Mayuko closed the door and stretched her shoulders. "We'll buy the seasonings here and go to the shopping district for the rest." I got out of the car and stretched my limbs. Looking behind me, I saw the 3 cars in Mayuko's red minivan lined up next to each other like this was some used car exhibit. A clerk sweeping the road in front of the entrance greeted us. I responded with a nod, but Mayuko didn't notice. Pushing open the glass door with faded red handles, she hurried into the store. Ooh. I pushed the shopping cart forward while listening to the folk rock music playing inside. "Did you say wrinkled potatoes are better?" I grabbed a few potatoes that looked better than the rest and showed them to Mayuko. The ones with less wrinkles are better. Let's take this, and this. She swiftly picked up the potatoes and put them into the shopping cart. I put the carrot I picked up with the potatoes into the shopping cart. Ah, we still have carrots fresh from our fields. Oh. She placed a carrot back on the shelf. Well, if we don't need carrots, then next up would be the onions, I guess. They're over there. Roll, roll. Here you go. I put a few onions into the shopping cart while Mayuko grabbed a broccoli. You want broccoli too? Is there a problem? Well, I doubt they'd ruin the taste. We still don't have the meat we need, though. I think I saw some over in that corner. It's interesting how different families tend to have different ideas about the ideal meat. There seems to be an overabundance of poultry. I suppose that qualifies as meat. I'll be eating a lot, so don't skimp on it. Okay. I spotted a seasoning placard dangling from the ceiling. Right, I'll go get my special spices now. I'm looking forward to it. I'll look for the other ingredients in the meantime. I thought, don't let her out of your sight, right? Did you find everything? Yep, as you can see. I dropped all of the bottles I carried into the shopping cart. Worcestershire sauce, caramel sauce. Worcestershire sauce? Cinnamon. Cinnamon? Cardamom, clove, chunsi. Oh yeah, is bay leaf basically the same thing as bay laurel? I thought you were planning to make curry. Huh? It's gonna be real curry. I saw some milk, consomme, and wheat flour in Mayuko's shopping cart. What is this you're doing to me, Takako? That's funny. After we bought all of the necessary ingredients, we moved on to stocking up on miscellaneous goods. The store was located in the shopping district, which was only a few minutes on foot from the food store. Mayuko, however, drove us there in her car, going as far as to park in a paying spot, being the ever-diligent person that she was. We left our bags in the car and continued down a narrow street until we reached a long, wide road on a slope. It had decorative trees on both sides, though by now they had already shed most of their leaves. The boulevard curved further down the road, eventually disappearing beyond the buildings. I didn't even know bay leaves were literally laurels. It's called that in English, French, and I think Italian too. I read somewhere that it was used to mask bad smells in old Europe, along with pepper and nutmeg. I can't help feeling a bit worried, though. Oh, just leave everything to me. The ingredients might look odd at first sight, but this is my ultimate curry we're talking about. Well, if worst comes to worst, at least we'll still have milk. You're worrying way too much. I waved my hand at Mayuko. She gave me a sidelong look. I suppose you're right. Mayuko touched her nose with the back of her index finger and smiled. Adding broccoli to curry, though? Well, that's not something I ever would have considered. I almost thought you changed your mind and decided to make stew instead. I mean, it's Christmas after all. Huh? What does Christmas have to do with stew? I mean, that's how it's traditionally been done as far as I'm aware. Even in commercials, you always hear that curry is for summer and stew is for winter. Ah, it's from the Pillow Book, right? No, not even close. Anyway, I can't say I get that. I smelled something sweet, and after looking around a bit, spotted some chocolate and maple syrup waffles in the store window of one of the shops. Most buildings around here gave home to various stores on their first floor, selling all kinds of items from food to toiletries and clothes. The wide road had no arches, letting the slanted rays of the sun reach us from the right. We've reached the shopping district. Any specific place you want to check out first? The bookstore! A present for Miss Sane, I take it? Have you decided on the book yet? She keeps telling me about what she's reading, so I have a rough idea. Some of the books she likes have sequels, and none of them are in the library. Sounds good. If we're looking for older books, then... Mayuko took a few steps ahead of me. An advertisement sign with a female model in a black suit. Souvenir stores with all sorts of trinkets lined up. A cosmetics store under a brown roof. A clothing store with mannequins wearing both child and adult-sized clothes. A store selling cloth with flower and bird designs. Our heels clicked against the stone pavement as we continued through this never-ending sea of shops. Aww. Mayuko? Yes? How about this? I pointed out the hairpin on one of the stands. Mayuko took a step back and considered the shop's sign. Oh, I recognize this place. It's a handmade accessory shop that's been gaining in popularity lately. Really? Is it for Kozue? Yeah, I mean, she's always like this, right? I used the pin to shift my front hair to the side. It suits you. You like seeing the forehead? Well, it doesn't really matter how it looks on me. I placed the hairpin back where I took it from. I think this would look good on you. Try it. Huh? I'm okay. Hey, don't be like that. Don't be like that. I just showed you my forehead, didn't I? Huh? What is going on here? After that, we tried a couple of other accessories. I picked out the one I thought would be best for a present. A present for Sane, a present for Kozue, who... How do they know each other? Is something the matter? Mayuko, who had been walking a few steps ahead of me, turned around. The shopping district looks a little different compared to what I expected. What did you think it would look like? A bunch of bananas for 500 yen, 400 yen, 300 yen. I can't go any lower, but I can throw in something extra. What do you say? I thwacked my thighs with my palms to imitate the sound of a stick thumping against the ground. Did you expect this to be like a traditional Mojiko banana market? I was hoping to see salesmen making passionate speeches as they introduce their merchandise and stuff. What age are you from? These days you only see stuff like that as part of special shows given at tourist locations. We continued down the silent road, our heels clicking against the red and gray stone pavement, until we reached a building that looked like a box made of concrete. I stared at it, wondering what it was. Eventually, I found a sign next to an enclosed space which looked like an entrance. It's a gallery! There was a large and imposing steel door at the end of the enclosed space. It was painted completely black. You said you wanted something to decorate the lounge with. I pushed the door open and stepped inside with Mayuko trailing behind me. Ooh. Our heels clicked against the hard parquet inside. Multiple easels stood in the middle of the room. The paintings on them were facing in different directions. I glanced around to see a window to the right of us and a counter to the left. A young spectacled man was sitting at said counter, reading a book with a stern expression on his face. He didn't react to our arrival in the slightest. I also spotted some shelves and a table close to the window, their warm colors lending the place a certain countryside-esque feel. What do you think about this? I pointed at a painting depicting a river and a sky in some European-looking land. The color of the sky is certainly peculiar in this one. All sorts of colors had been blended to make it that way, a pale mix of purple and pink. The river was quite colorful too, with golden trees towering above it. Do you think it would look nice in our lounge? I'd say it's perfect for our building. We ascended the artistically distorted stairs, reminding me of a wisp of smoke, and reached a narrow corridor on the second floor. The stairs leading to the third floor had a keep out sign in front of them. A row of small palm-sized windows lined the wall on our right, their light illuminating the pictures on the left wall. I wonder if this light gets misaligned when the sun moves. Mayuko took a few steps toward the row of windows. They're probably using mirrors or something. I inspected the paintings. Their frames were a lot simpler design compared to what we'd seen below. Most of them were similar to our candidate for the lounge, boasting a wide palette of unusual colors. The last one was a painting of a clover. Its 4 leaves all had different colors. They look like normal windows to me, maybe a little on the thick side, but still. There are probably mirrors inside, but I can't see them. Mayuko returned. That's a beautiful one. I realized I had been staring at that oddly familiar thing. It looks a lot like a painting I drew in the past. Well, not like using a clover as a motive was a particularly original idea. I'd already seen plenty of pictures like this. I tried searching my memories to figure out which picture this one resembled, but that abrupt feeling I had when I first saw it was already gone. Nonetheless, I felt certain I must have seen something akin to nostalgia and loneliness. Don't you paint anymore? Well, perhaps it's a hobby I should pick back up. Then how about we hang your picture in the lounge instead? After a few moments of admiring the clover painting, I answered her question with a curt okay, then moved away from the picture. Realizing that Mayuko wasn't following me, I glanced over my shoulder and saw her still staring at the clover. Maybe I should paint you. Sounds like a good idea. Mayuko turned around and smiled at me. Are you really okay with it? As I saw her smile, that feeling I couldn't remember earlier passed through the back of my mind again. I could have sworn I saw a brief moment of my past pop up for a split second, like a camera flash. Mayuko caught up to me, and we continued to look around the gallery together. After checking all the works in the narrow corridor, we descended the stairs and found another room with pictures on the first floor. I spent the entire time trying to remember the image that flashed through my mind when Mayuko smiled. Yet no matter how hard I racked my brain, I simply couldn't recall it. I wonder if she painted Takako at some point. Or Sachiko. The sudden change in temperature as I stepped outside sent a shiver down my back. Phew, it's cold out here. You okay, Mayuko? I think I can still handle it, but we should probably start thinking about heading back. Mayuko pointed at the mountain our sanatorium was on. Yeah. As we made our way back on the road that had grown even more deserted after dark, I smelled some food somewhere in the vicinity. It was about time for late-night restaurants to open. Can we go there for a bit? Are you okay with a simple family restaurant? We've already spent lots of money today. I suppose you're right. I spread out the menu on the table so Mayuko could see it as well. I guess I'd like a standard meal. Oh, they have tempura chicken! That's a little unusual for a family restaurant. It wasn't that rare where I come from, though I never ate it much when I was little. Why? I liked deep-fried chicken more than tempura because it had a stronger taste. But as I grew up, I started to appreciate the more mature taste of soy sauce that comes with tempura chicken. I guess that's what happens when you become an adult. Your tongue is still that of a child if you haven't eaten green peppers, eggplant, and other vinaigrette dishes, though? I don't know. Hey, I don't mind stuffed pepper. My body can't take vinegar, though. Is that so? Did you decide what you want? Yes. Excuse me, we'd like to order. Or, Takako, there's a bell right there on the table. Mayuko reached out toward it. My way is faster. A waitress carrying water to another table spotted us. See? What will you be ordering? A standard meal of chicken tempura, please. And what about you, Mayuko? Seafood pasta, please. Standard meal of chicken tempura and seafood pasta. Drinks? 2 cups of hot coffee. You're fine with that, right? Yes. Understood. The waitress jotted down our orders on her memo, then stuffed it behind the strap on her apron as she continued to the counter. I checked the picture of seafood pasta they had in the menu. It came with manila clamps, shrimps, and all sorts of other marine critters. I guess swapping meals is not something adults do, is it? I wouldn't mind a chicken tempura either. Been a while since I've had any. Oh, so you also had it back in your hometown. You familiar with Yasuma? It's a sweet made from dango, isn't it? With soy flour topping and all that? Yeah, I haven't had it in ages. Didn't you get those a lot of snacks back in kindergarten? Yeah, I remember this one time I was in such a hurry I ended up inhaling the flour. I almost choked. Would you like me to make them sometime? That would be great! By the way, what are you doing there? Mayuko asked as I was peeking down into my paper bag. Just making sure I haven't forgotten anything. So, have we? I went through the contents of the bag. No, I don't think so. I looked up at the nearby window, seeing the interior of the restaurant reflected in its glass. An old folk rock song, the same one I heard at the store earlier today, began playing on the radio. I'm hungry. I wonder how much longer it will take. It's going to be here in a minute, don't worry. Takako is my spirit animal. Thank you very much. Whew, that was great. I pushed open the family restaurant's door. The chicken tempura was pretty good after all. Yeah, the sauce and the seafood thing wasn't as strong as I expected, so I ended up eating the whole thing like a delicious soup. Leaving the foyer of the restaurant, we stepped out onto the streets. It's gotten even colder. You okay, Mayuko? I suppose I'm a bit cold too. Let's just hurry home. Yeah. I shoved my right hand into my pocket. Want to stick your hands in there too? I pointed at it with my left. That's a pretty embarrassing position. She made a troubled smile. All that means is that we've got to hurry. We continued down the road, our heels clicking against the stone pavement. A light suddenly lit up further into the shopping district. It then began to spread towards us like a wave, lighting up the whole area and making me almost believe it was the middle of the day. Aww. Oh, that's right. They were saying they would light up the shopping district. Oh. Electronic lights were attached between the two opposing trees of the boulevard, resembling a golden roof above us. It's pretty. It certainly is. It might look even more amazing from above. I think you should be able to see them from the sanatorium. Really? Do you think Sane and Kozue saw it? I'm sure they were watching. They'll be surprised to learn we were there. Yeah. It had grown quite warm inside the car as it steadily ascended the hill. I heard a voice and slowly opened my eyes. Are you listening? Yeah, I was just resting my eyes. I hope she likes the present. Yeah. I imagine you'll be quite busy tomorrow. I'll let you know once you can use the kitchen. Yeah. Are you listening? Yeah, I'll take the seaweed rice ball. Excuse me? Why is it wrapped in seaweed? You're sleeping, aren't you? Yep. Sounds like Takako had a nice day. Still on chapter 3. Whoa! My knife slipped, and instead of peeling the potato, almost ended up slicing off my fingers. Give that to me. My potatoes got taken away. Mayuko pressed the kitchen knife against the potato, and using only her thumb guided the blade to swiftly peel the skin off the thing. She picked up the peeled potato with the tip of the knife and tossed it into the bowl. I think I got it. I picked up another potato, pressed the blade against it, and using only my thumb... Yes, just like that. Whoa. I almost severed my fingers. I placed the potato on the chopping board and sliced it into a rectangle. It became half its previous size, but at least my fingers were safe. You're wasting food. Jeez, give me a break. It's not like we're short on potatoes or anything. You don't cook much, do you? No. You have made curry before, right? A few times, using a curry sauce mix. This is my first time cooking with spice powder, though. Your first time? Don't get your panties in a bunch, okay? I've written down the recipe. I checked the little paper hanging on one of the cookware hooks on the wall. Okay, Mayuko's gonna throw a tantrum. Add salad oil and some butter, then warm the pot. Add shredded onion to fill the entire pot. The oil vapor began hurting my eyes as I squinted into the pot, stirring it up with a rice scoop. I pulled the cord to turn the ventilator on. It's going to take quite a bit of work to prepare a serving for 4. Is there anything I can help with? I'm good. I think it'd be better if you took care of that instead. I pointed toward the inner yard. You might be right. I'm leaving this to you then. It's starting to smell nice. I heard Mayuko leave the kitchen. Stir, stir. Stir, stir. Stir, stir. I checked the clock on the wall to the left. 3 minutes had passed since I started sautéing the onions. Aside from the clock, there were various cooking utensils, frying pans and ladles hung on the wall. Bottles of salt and sugar rested on the shelf in front of me, don't confuse them, as well as a can of cinnamon and a bag of cardamom I bought yesterday. There was a window below the shelf through which I could see a part of the inner yard. Stir, stir. I stopped stirring in the same direction and tried flipping the onions over. A wisp of smoke escaped from the bottom of the pot, making me cough. I hurriedly lowered the intensity of the flame. Okay, this is gonna go one of 2 ways. The onions on the bottom all looked pretty brown. Once the onions released water and settled on the bottom of the pot, add water, curry powder, and seasoning, then simmer. Mayuko returned to the kitchen by the time my dish turned into curry vegetable soup. It smells good. 'Cause I made everything myself, starting with the powder. It definitely smells more like the real deal compared to the store-bought sauce mix. As I scooped up a bit of it with my rice scoop, I saw it drip down like soup. I might have made it a bit too thin. Maybe it just needs more time to simmer. I made the flame a bit stronger. By the way, what are you doing here? It's going to be a surprise. Mayuko took a bowl from one of the shelves and added flour, salt, and some water into it. Udon? I'm not going to turn this into udon curry. It won't be udon. Oh, that's right. Remember how there were a couple with huge shopping bags walking ahead of us back at the shopping district? Was there? When I tried to get past them, I hit my head against the sign. Look. I remember now. I brushed aside my hair from my forehead to show Mayuko my lump. How many How many bumps is poor Takako going to get on her poor head? Looks like it's swollen up a little. That's why I keep saying it's rude to take the entire sidewalk for yourselves. You could have said excuse me and had them open some space. I'd probably hurt the guy's feelings if I made him look like a fool in front of his girlfriend. You're actually considerate when it comes to that? But I see bicyclers ring their bells all the time. I wonder if I should be carrying a bell too. You could take it off a bicycle. It's not that hard. That might be a good idea. But don't you think it would result in an even more embarrassing situation? Well, then what am I supposed to do? Maybe you don't need to get past them and just stay behind. I heard a bubbling sound and glanced at the pot. I licked a bit of my dish off the side of the ladle. It tastes burned. Mayuko stopped kneading the dough. Can I see? She took the ladle and had a taste of the curry. It's burned. What do I do? Mayuko scooped up a bit of each ingredient from the pot, testing their taste. Some of the ingredients seem to still be okay. Do you have any curry powder left? Almost none. That's too bad. I glanced at the clock. It was 3 p.m. One of two ways. It went way number 1. After dusting off and carrying the chairs and table from the storeroom, we covered the table with 2 tablecloths. One was gray and had an intricate design on its edges, while the other was a reddish color and sported a flower pattern. I was changing the lights when I heard Mayuko walking down the corridor. It looks better than I thought. What about the food? I managed to save it. Oh, I knew you could do it, Mayuko. Thank goodness. You owe me. Of course. Just say the word and I'll do whatever you want as thanks. I'll try to think of something then. After finishing, I climbed down the stand, only to have Mayuko suddenly run her hand through my hair. You're all covered in dust. Are you planning to participate in the party looking like this? I'll go take a bath once I'm done with this. I showed her the garland made of colored paper. It certainly has a Christmassy feel. When did you have time to make it? Yesterday. When Mayuko took one of its ends in her hands, her face clouded over. It's because you stay up late making things like this that... please don't pour salt on my fresh wound. I could see a violet tinted sky and some tree branches through the large bathroom window. I didn't turn on the lights, but it wasn't too much darker in the room than outside. Okay. What's Kozue doing here? I spotted Kozue washing her small body in front of one of the mirrors. You're quite extravagant taking evening baths at your age. What does that have to do with extravagance? I'm talking about taking your time to soak in the bath on the weekend, then cooling yourself off with a can of chilled beer before dinner. For the average person, that's the pinnacle of extravagance. You sound like an old man. At least let me be a woman. Whatever. Kozue poured another bowl of water on herself and moved to the tub. Did you decide on what to wear for the party? Were you actually serious about that? To an extent. I doubt the others will care too much about my dress code. Haha, well, not like I mind. Then don't ask for nonsense like that to begin with. I don't get out much around here. I thought it'd be cool to dress up with everyone at least once a year. I see. I didn't expect for you to actually have a reason. You think I'm just messing around all the time, don't you? Not really. I glanced at the purple sky one more time and stood up. The water was splashing all around me. I'll get out first. Kozue made a brief nod. So is Kozue still a kid, or is she older here? I'm very confused. I hurried through the chilly corridor. The mansion had warmed up a little during noon, but the warmth escaped as soon as the sun went down, leaving only this chill. Through the window, I spotted the full moon shining faintly in the sky. I closed the door as soon as I entered the room. Phew, it's so nice and warm in here. Welcome back. Mayuko turned to me. I almost froze to death in the corridor. The kerosene stove's flame gently flickered under the kettle placed on it. I see you've already changed. Does it look good on me? You look pretty handsome. It would look better if your collar wasn't crooked, though. Whoops! Mayuko pointed at her own neck. I fixed my collar right away. The tea's almost done. Oh, cool. I'll have some. I'll bring your dinner while you drink, said Mayuko as she left the room. I was left alone in the room with only a table, 4 chairs, each with a different design, likely stemming from different time periods, and a bunch of garlands around me. The first chair was a deep wine red color with a red cushion and a high backrest. The second was embroidered with green velvet and looked almost like it came straight from England. The third was a country-style chair made of oak. Finally, the last one looked like it was from the Victorian era, with cat-like legs and a delicately embroidered flower pattern on its fabric. As I sat down in the country-style chair, the one I found the blandest, Mayuko returned to the room. On the tray she placed in front of me rested a saucer and a cup of black tea. Don't spill it. I'll do my best. Following a brief knock, the door opened. Aw, she's beautiful. Good evening. Welcome. Have a seat here. I stood up and pulled back the chair on the other side of the table. That dress looks really good on you. Really? I wasn't sure what people usually wore to parties, so I was worried I might have overdressed. Don't worry, it looks radical. Huh? Where did you even learn that word? Sane was wearing a long purple skirt and a pink blouse with open sleeves that highlighted the curves of her body quite nicely. The pink scarf and ribbons also added to the overall allure of the design. I just thought chic clothes would look good on you, but a dress like this is even better. Thank you. Sane sat down in her chair, visibly conscious of her open sleeves. Do you want a shawl? Sane shook her head and held up a couple of the records she brought with her. This is what you asked for. I gave their labels a quick glance. Most of them were classical music. Something calm and soothing would be good right now. I spotted the folk song I'd heard in town yesterday. You even had this! Thanks! I took one of the records out of the case, placed it on the record player that used to be in Sane's room, and let down the needle. Whoop. Okay, accidentally hit the fast forward button again. After some brief noise, music started playing. Right then, the door opened, and in walked Mayuko, holding a big pot. Good evening, Miss Sane. Good evening. Do you need help? I'm good. She placed the pot in the middle of the table and let out a breath. What do you think about Sane's dress, Mayuko? Mayuko looked Sane over from head to toe. Didn't know you had such a good figure, Sane. See? I told you it looks good. Thank you. You look different with your hair down. More mature. Really? Sane looked away as her cheeks flushed, then ran her hand through her hair. Mayuko regarded her with a gentle smile. Hey, look at me for a bit. Sane turned toward me. Relax, I'm just going to take your glasses off. Aw. I took her glasses off. Oh. Can I have a look too? Not so sure about that. I'm the one who discovered this rare treasure, so maybe I ought to charge a fee. Hey, it's not like you lose something by letting me have a look. Robbing a spectacled girl of her glasses is like tearing off her bra in front of a crowd, you know. Really? Sane quickly put her glasses back on. I've never heard that before. I think I read it in some book. Did you now? Anyway, I still have to bring in another pot. Poor Sane, she's probably so embarrassed. Should I help? No, it's just the one pot, so you two have fun while I'm gone. Mayuko left the room. Sane inspected the room's decorations. God, when was the last time I've been to something like this? You didn't celebrate much before? I don't know. I don't even remember the last time we celebrated anything. Did you make those paper decorations, Takako? It adds to the mood, don't you think? They look childish. Sane snickered to herself. This chair is from the library, isn't it? Yes. You're used to sitting in it, aren't you? It's a Christmas party, so I thought it should have a Western feel about it. I got this chair from the lobby, and that other one was in a room that looked like a study. Well, not like it was particularly hard to find Western furniture in a Western-style mansion. What about the table? Mayuko and I carried it here from the storeroom. My shoulder still hurts a bit. The table in the dining room would have been closer. It's easier to speak when the table is round, isn't it? A wise person once said, the better the organization, the less obvious are the individual achievements of its members. I see. A pot was steaming on this table that we were discussing right now. Sane stared at it. This is curry, right? I heard footsteps outside, and soon enough the door opened. She is so embarrassed. Look at her. She hates being there. She is going to kill Takako. We all know she's going to kill Takako. I found a cute guest on my way here. Kozue entered the room after Mayuko. She was wearing a light green one-piece dress. Great find, Mayuko. I stood up and pulled back the chair next to me. This is your seat, Kozue. She walked over to the table with small steps. I'm glad you actually considered my suggestion. About the dress or coming here? The dress, of course. You left it in the changing room, didn't you? I still wasn't sure if you'd wear it. If this is one of Takako's dresses, then are they the same size? So I guess Kozue might be older. I am very confused on the timeline of this game. Yeah, it looks great on you. Seems like I picked out just the right size. Where did you get it? It's a present from Mayuko and me. Oh wait, she got the dress yesterday. Got it. Oh, excuse me. Mayuko placed a wooden bowl of potato salad and some plates on the table. After she finished lining them up, she walked over to the empty seat opposite of Kozue, placed her hand on the lid of the pot, and sat down. Okay then, I'm opening it. A wisp of white steam escaped from the pot as its lid was removed. However, even after the steam dissipated, the inside of the pot remained white. Is this a stew? So your special curry was actually stew? Everyone's picking on me. I clung to Mayuko's sleeve as she grabbed a ladle and began serving the stew to everyone. I'm sorry. The curry was a failure, so we had to make some last-minute changes and ended up with a stew. How does a curry turn into stew? Kozue asked. does that when you sacrifice your morning cereal for burning the pot. I see. Here, this one's for Kozue. Mayuko handed me Kozue's soup bowl. I took it and placed it in front of her. What kind of meeting is this, anyway? It's a Christmas party. Didn't you see the tree on the invitation card? The only thing reminding me of Christmas right now is your pair of red socks. Why do people put presents into red socks anyway? Wow, okay. 3 girls were about to be sold off into slavery, so Santa prepared the gold to save them, and when he threw it into the chimney, it all ended up in the socks they were hung above the fireplace. Apparently. Well, would you look at that? Well, would you look at that? We happen to have 3 young ladies here as well. Mayuko, Sane, and Kozue. Maybe there's some gold in one of your socks, too. That story sounds fishy as hell. Hey, I read it in a book. Mayuko finished handing out the stew to everyone and sat down in her seat. Let's eat it while it's still warm. Time to dig in. I placed my palms together. Sane did the same a moment later while Kozue just mumbled something under her breath. Oh, it came out pretty well after all, said Mayuko after trying a spoonful. It tastes good, said Sane. Kozue blew some air on her spoon to cool the stew down and ate it then. It would have felt more like Christmas if this was curry, though, I said to Kozue. Kozue narrowed her eyes. Why? Stew feels like a winter dish to me, while curry is more fit for summer, in my opinion. Kozue nodded in response to Mayuko's words. I agree. What about you, Sane? Sane looked up in response to having been addressed, still chewing on a carrot. Stew's for winter, I suppose. So you were only saying that because you liked curry, Takako. I feel like a foreigner all of a sudden. I sliced the soft steamed potato in half with my spoon, then put it in my mouth alongside a small portion of stew. It's really hard to keep track of who's speaking when there's 4 people speaking at once. Oh, this game. Excuse me. After we got rid of all the dishes, the only thing left on the table was a lone pencil holder. It was filled with pencils of various lengths and age. Mayuko took a red pencil out of it. The empty space this created was then promptly filled up by other pencils, making the whole thing even more unstable. The purple one's next, Takako. I'm not sure it's even possible at this point. I grabbed the purple pencil and swiftly pulled it out. Losing their support, the pencils fell and scattered across the table. Oh, I lost again! It's because you're doing it too fast, said Sane. The grandfather clock in the lobby struck the hour. Excuse me for a bit. I stood up and left the room. I returned, now dressed in a red coat, pants, and hat, plus a white beard. Merry Christmas! Kozue jumped up as I threw the door open. She was the first one to see me. Have you all been good kids this year, huh? I met Sane's silent gaze. Ah, if it isn't Miss Sane. You were very good this year. Here, have this. I pulled out a book from my white bag and handed it to her. It was covered in wrapping decorated with a flower design. Thank you very much. I turned to Kozue next. Next up on this list would be Kozue. You were a little naughty this year, especially concerning your treatment of Miss Takako. Yeah, whatever. Just get it over with already. I handed her a red bag with a big ribbon. Be a nice girl next year, okay? Thanks. What? She didn't get anything from Mayuko, did she? After we finished playing cards, Mayuko left to make some tea. Upon returning, she placed a cup in front of each of us. She also brought a double dessert plate with chocolate on it, oh baby, as well as another small plate with some stretched dango covered in soy flour. Those are so nostalgic, Sane remarked. I made them myself. Are those the only Japanese sweets we're getting today? I'll happily eat your share if you don't want them. I'm not giving them away. A wisp of steam billowed from the hot tea. Before we knew it, the purple of the sky had shifted into the deep and dark hue of the night. Sane, who had never been too talkative to begin with, fell completely silent. She was simply swaying back and forth in her chair. I could see the silhouette of a massive tree beyond the window. I think it's about time I turn them on. Yes, please. Sane's gaze followed Mayuko's back as she left the room. Sane, look outside. Kozue, are you still awake? I'm not sleeping. Okay. I switched off the lights. Darkness enveloped the room, the faint glow of the stars its only source of light. Oh, still in her Santa outfit. I narrowed my eyes, trying to get used to the dark. Yet before I had time to do that, a warm light reached me from outside. Countless orbs of light drifted in the air. Kozue approached the window and looked outside. Is that a Christmas tree? Sane asked. The camphor tree has lights on it. I heard the door open behind us, and Mayuko entered the room. How does it look? It's beautiful. Though maybe we should have bought more lights. That looks plenty to me. The blinking lights of the camphor tree illuminated all of us. Kozue by the window, Sane in her chair, as well as Mayuko and myself chatting by the door. Merry Christmas. The Christmas party continued even after the clock had struck 10. After admiring the bright lights of the tree, we returned to our seats and spent the rest of the time talking over cups of tea. As the clock struck an hour again, Mayuko suggested calling it a night and sent Sane back to her room. Sane wanted to stay and help with the cleaning, but Mayuko wouldn't hear it. Meanwhile, Kozue had fallen completely silent by 9:30. Her eyes looked even more drowsy than usual. When Mayuko told us to wrap things up, she silently stood up and left the room just like that. With no one left to talk to, I had no choice but to help Mayuko clean up. Mayuko tried refusing my help again, but I ignored her. I placed the remaining glasses on the tray and carried them to the kitchen. Even during the party, Mayuko kept carrying out plates as we cleared them, so right now the only things left were just a few glasses and a plate with some snacks. Is this all? I asked Mayuko as I placed the glasses into the sink. Yes, feel free to return to your room and have some rest. What about you? I'll go back to my room as soon as I finish washing these glasses. Mayuko turned the handle of the water tap and began polishing one of the glasses as the sink gradually filled up. I'll return to the night duty room then. What? Are you planning on sleeping there again? I worked so hard today, I have no energy left to climb the stairs. Mayuko turned the water tap handle in the opposite direction once the sink had completely filled up. I suppose it cannot be helped then. Yep. Anyway, I'm off. See you. After getting permission to sleep in the night duty room, I left the kitchen. I doubt I'll be late, but feel free to go to sleep before me, said Mayuko as I left. I gave her my reply and continued outside. Upon entering the dark night duty room, I flipped the light switch. I unfolded the foldable table by the wall and placed it in the center of the room. As I sat down in my usual spot, I noticed 2 folded up futons in the corner. I stood up, picked them up, and placed them somewhat closer to the table. After that, I sat down in front of the table and rested my head in my arms. I let all the energy leave my body, like air escaping an inflatable boat. I must have been even more tired than I thought. I closed my eyes. I remained still for a while, my mind empty of thoughts. Soon enough, I realized I'd lost track of time. My body felt heavy as lead. Nonetheless, I mustered all the strength I could and slowly pushed myself away from the table. I rose to my feet and staggered awkwardly toward the cupboard like some robot from an old movie. I opened its glass door and took out my notebook. Finally, I sat back down on the futon. The only thing on the notebook's leather cover was the name of its manufacturer. Mayoko said it was sent to me in an anonymous letter. However, that still meant someone had sent it. I opened it and took out my bookmark. I read it little by little whenever I had time, and by now the stack of pages on the right had grown thicker than the pages on the left. What I read so far was basically a diary about my childhood. November 7, 1981. Today, we visited an aquarium as part of a field trip. We boarded the bus at the entrance of the school, drove down the streets, and after a dozen or so minutes spent on the highway next to the sea, reached the official border of the town. Since there were no other aquariums close by, most of the other kids had already been to it with their families. Nonetheless, Takako happily discussed all the fish she loved with everyone she could. I love aquariums, especially the electric eels. They have eels here? They're in the hall after the corridor with the marinated oarfish. That thing was amazing too. It was long enough to reach the ceiling of our gym. Was it that big? The noisy chatter of the students filled the bus. I glanced out the window to see the sea beyond the breakwater along the highway. The water sparkled as it reflected the rising sun. The teachers told everyone to keep it down, and the noise disappeared for a few moments, only to start up again a bit later. To enter the aquarium, we had to pass through the spinning tetrapod-looking thing one by one. It grew dimmer inside as I walked down the corridor, and the amount of water tanks on each side increased too. Below, there were bright panels with the names of fish and brief descriptions of their habitats. I spent some time staring at the beautiful corals inside, but couldn't find a single fish. Looking at the panel, I saw an introduction on a translucent shrimp. I looked at the tank again and spotted something akin to a permeable tentacle behind the red corals. I quit reading for a moment and rubbed my eyes. I felt pain behind my eyes, just like the first time I read the diary, but it was no longer as intense as before. As the pain passed, I returned my eyes to the notebook. I felt the memories of the aquarium come alive in my mind. We were playing Shiri Tori in the back of the bus with Sachiko. After we got to the actual aquarium, I spent most of my time looking at fish I liked with Sachiko. The diary was written from Sachiko's perspective, though. I gave the script a hard look. It seemed somewhat rushed. The letters weren't perfectly aligned and were of uneven sizes. Their shape, however, was perfect, almost like they were printed. What I found disconcerting was that this obviously wasn't Sachiko's handwriting. It bore some level of similarity, but Sachiko's handwriting reflected her calm and practical personality. I'd never seen her misalign her letters like this. Meanwhile, the letters here felt dynamic, energetic. Placing a finger on the current page, I flipped to the very end of the notebook. Its final pages were empty, without any information that would hint at who wrote it or why. And there was one more thing that bothered me. The dates in this diary were all over the place. I flipped through a couple of pages and checked the dates. Subsequent entries would occasionally be years apart. Others even moved to the past. It felt completely random. The most likely explanation was that someone had Sachiko tell stories and wrote them down, But that didn't explain why the book was sent to me, and anonymously to boot. I stretched my neck and arms to avoid cramping up in this position. Blind guesses wouldn't get me any closer to the answer. I decided to keep reading. Well, then who wrote it? Was this Narasaki? Let's go see the electric eels. Takako pulled me by the sleeve. After following the tunnel for a while, we ended up in a wide space with no roof. In the center, there was a big curved pool that currently seemed to be in use for the sea lion and penguin show. Most of the students stopped there to look at the sea lion playing with a ball, but Takako said we could always check that out later and continued to another corridor while cheerful music played in the background. It grew dark again and I felt cold. The amount of water tanks almost seemed to have decreased in number. Takako led the way with confident steps. As the road curved around and the corridor grew even narrower, I spotted the marinated oarfish in a huge rectangular tank. It's huge, isn't it? Feels almost like it grew bigger since last time. Yeah, right. The washed-out giant had cavities for eyes that looked quite creepy with its sharp teeth peeking from its half-opened mouth. This thing could make a small child cry. I visited this place when I was small and I never found it scary. Is that so? We passed through the large door at the end of the corridor and found ourselves in a spacious cylinder-shaped hall. It seemed about 20 meters in diameter and had a stairwell of seats in the middle that looked like a pyramid. Aquariums loomed embedded in the walls of the room at uniform distance from each other, circling around the seats. Animals inside looked down on the audience with indifferent eyes. The walls themselves were covered in black paint, making them almost impossible to make out in the dim lighting. Only the insides of the aquariums glowed, illuminated by a faint light. Takako, mumbling something about the usual place, headed straight ahead and took a seat in the center of the pyramid. The electrical eel tank stood right in front of us. Beep. The show in this hall is scheduled to begin at 10:30. After looking around a bit, I spotted a red digital clock above one of the tanks. Beep. The speakers turned on again. It is time to begin the show. Please direct your attention to the aquarium with the lights. It was the one with an octopus. A translucent bottle seemed to fall inside it from the top. It came with a cap you had to turn in order to release the feed inside. The octopus caught the bottle in one of its tentacles, placed its sucker on the cap, and slowly opened the thing to access its meal. Most people don't realize just how intelligent octopuses are. Or so the voice from the speakers claimed. A moment later, the lights of the neighboring tank lit up. Next, please observe this parrotfish. A couple of colorful rings were lowered into the tank. The fish swam through all of them, and after getting some feed, circled around and passed through the rings again. It swam at normal speed while circling around, but got really fast when it passed through the rings. Then the lights on the neighboring aquarium lit up. There was a flat triangle-shaped archerfish in it. We will now see how archerfish make use of the water to catch their prey. The water in the archerfish tank receded a bit. An employee then came out and placed something on a branch above the water. The archerfish swiftly swam to the surface near the branch, squirted out some water to knock the feed down, then promptly devoured it. Archerfish can squirt water up to 3 meters in height. However, they are also able to jump out of the water, increasing that height even further. The next one was the tank of electric eels. I stole a glance at Takako to see her staring at the tank with a serious expression and her mouth agape. The length of electric eels varied from 1 to 1.5 meters. I could see them swimming around in the tank with their huge curtain-like fins. When another little fish was put inside the tank, a volley of zapping sounds burst forth from the speakers. The sound you are currently hearing is an auditory representation of the voltage in the tank. There was a screen above the tank that represented the current voltage inside the tank. The little fish swam around quite energetically, but following another zapping noise, it suddenly stopped moving altogether and ended up swallowed by the electric eel. As our train departed, Takako gazed at the receding aquarium through the window with wistful eyes. The electric eels were so cool. We ended up missing the dolphin show, though. Electric eels, sea otters, and axolotls are the best things the aquarium has anyway. Takako displayed a particular interest in axolotls, so we had to go to the exit where its cage was located a bit early. We spent the rest of our time observing the barely modal pink amphibian. I wonder why they aren't selling axolotl plushies, Takako remarked as she gazed at the picture of the axolotl she bought as part of a set in the souvenir store. They had otter plushies. There was a plushie of a mother otter with its cubs attached to its feet as if they were embracing them. You could also detach the little ones and play with them separately. I already have that one. Oh. Was it really okay not to buy any souvenirs? Takako looked at me. Yes. Takako took out the axolotl picture from the batch and held up the rest in front of me. You can have one if you want. I don't. Look, there's even one of the oarfish. I saw an unnaturally long fish resembling a cutlass fish. Unlike the cutlass fish, though, this one had big red fins. It was the exact same oarfish we saw marinating in the whatever that is tank earlier. Formaldehyde tank earlier. Actually, the same picture was attached to the tank next to the description. If I remembered correctly, the description claimed that the oarfish was caught 8 years ago in the net of a local fisherman. He was sent to the aquarium right away and remained alive for a little while before ultimately passing away. In the picture, it was swimming in the tank. It had no eyes when I saw it earlier today, but in the picture it was looking in some weird direction. I felt like it was looking at me. I didn't understand why a deep-sea fish would swim close enough to the surface to get caught in a net, though. I wondered what thoughts circled through its mind while being locked up in the tank. Did it regret coming up to the surface? I wonder why a deep-sea fish like this was swimming so close to the surface. Maybe it got bored of the darkness and came to see the corals. But the corridor it ended up with was pretty dark too, Takako added. If only the door had been open, it could have watched the electric eel show. Then it would never have been bored, said Takako with a smile. That's a fun thought. The door to the night duty room opened, and around the same time I finished that passage. I turned around to see Mayuko taking off her slippers by the door. I'm home. Welcome back. Mayuko passed by me, glancing at the notebook in my hand, but it didn't seem like she was particularly concerned about it. She grabbed a cup from the small cupboard in the kitchen and filled it with water. Oh, I'd like some water too, I said as I placed the notebook back on the shelf. Mayuko washed the cup she had just drunk from, filled it with water again, and handed it to me. I took it. Maybe the temperature outside was to blame, but the water felt so cold I could have sworn I just swallowed a chunk of pure ice. Mayuko sat down in front of me and let out a breath. Do you like aquariums, Mayuko? I used to visit them a lot when I was little. Why? Same here. I kind of remembered my trip to one just earlier. Do you have any fish you're particularly fond of? I like clownfish. I'd say I'm pretty fond of colorful southern fish. And the corals in the aquariums always look so pretty. What kind of fish is a clownfish? So this is before Finding Nemo, at least. Mayuko made a fish shape out of her hands as she described it. It's orange and has a frame shaped like this. It also has 3 white vertical lines going through its body. Oh, and it tends to hide among an enemy. It's especially cute to see it carefully peek its face from them. Huh? That sounds like anemone fish. Anemone fish? I don't know that one. I'm pretty sure the sign said clownfish, though. It sounded kind of cute, so I remember it pretty well. Sure sounded like you were describing an enemy fish. What kind of fish do you like, Takako? Electric eels! Electric eels? The ones letting out that zapping noise, right? The aquarium creates those sounds to make it easier to understand what's happening. So I guess the aquarium you visited had them too, huh? Yeah. I even got a little startled when that sound just came out of nowhere as I passed by the area. Are there any other fish you like? They're not fish, but I always look forward to seeing otters and axolotls. Me too. Axolotls got wildly popular among everyone because of that television commercial. That sure brings back memories. I'm glad you like them too. Seeing them slowly move around is totally relaxing, and the dumb face they make as they open their mouths is cute. Mayuko smiled. I'm relieved to hear you like cute things too. I was worried you'd say killer whales or sharks after those electric eels. I decided not to mention oarfish. I like cute things as much as the next person. It's just that I have more curiosity than most. You certainly do, Mayuko agreed with a nod. By the way, axolotls are related to salamanders, right? I wonder if they grow big and change colors once they come of age. Axolotls retain their juvenile features as they grow. It's called neoteny, I think. But I heard they change depending on the environment. They lose their gills and adapt to lung breathing and end up looking kind of like lizards. Or at least that's what was written in the description. I see. Yep, they're amphibians. I read it countless times. You sound like you really liked aquariums. How about we all go to one sometime later? Are there any around here? Not anywhere close, but I heard a new one opened up near Osaka. It's pretty big too. That sounds great. When are we going? Let's see. Mayuko fell in thought for a few moments, then looked straight at me. We can think about that once we finish cleaning up after Christmas. Mayuko laid down the futons as we finished talking about the aquarium. This music doesn't sound good. She asked me where I wanted to sleep, and I said here. I climbed into the futon and closed my eyes. Okay, music sounds fine now. Just a slow start. I felt tired and wanted to fall asleep as soon as possible. As I emptied my head, the corridor with the oarfish popped into my mind. I was walking through it, holding hands with Sachiko. When I realized it couldn't have been real, I woke up. I glanced at the clock and with the help of the moonlight, made out the display. Only 10 minutes had passed since I went to bed. My hand, however, was still pretending to hold Sachiko's. It made me wonder if it was a dream or a delusion. In the end, I figured there wasn't much of a difference between the two. More importantly, I suddenly felt cold. And it only got worse as I kept reading more of the diary. The more I remembered my time with Sachiko, the more I felt the void where her presence used to be. I truly felt like a hole had opened up in me. If I listened in, I could hear the sound of the wind blowing through it. That hole had been there all along. I remembered someone telling me that. I glanced at Mayuko and saw her sleeping on her back, completely undisturbed. Her profile looked beautiful in the moonlight. She reminded me of Sachiko a little. Wanting to take a closer look, I climbed out of my futon and drew closer to her. Their eyes were about the only thing differentiating them. Sachiko always looked like she was sleepy, which made the shape of her eyes appear somewhat narrower than Mayuko's. Still, I wondered how they'd compare when both fully opened their eyes. I felt like they might look the same. Is something wrong? Mayuko addressed me with her eyes closed. I can't sleep because of the cold. Can I get in? Mayuko half opened one of her eyes, then closed it again. She told me it was okay. Grabbing my pillow, I slid into her futon. Mayuko turned her back to me. I hesitated for a second, then wrapped my arms around her. When I stuck my hand below her, Mayuko raised her body a little. I could hear the beating of my heart as I pressed my breasts against her back. Mayuko was either very light or slept in a good position because my hand didn't hurt at all, despite being pinned under her weight. I connected our 2 pillows into one, then made my head comfortable in the middle and closed my eyes. During my light fidgeting, my hand brushed against Mayuko's bra. A mischievous idea popped into my mind, but I hurriedly discarded it. I was already causing her enough trouble with my weird condition, so I didn't want to make the whole situation even more awkward. As I fell asleep, I dreamt of having sex with Mayuko. I squeezed her breasts with one hand while sticking my other between her thighs. I toyed with her nipples, listening to her moan. When I guided her hand to my crotch, she slowly started massaging it. Elated, I turned her over and began vigorously going at her from the front. Mayuko hid her face with her hands, trying to avoid eye contact. Her face kept turning into Sachiko's from time to time. I still felt everything when I woke up in the morning. Before I opened my eyes, I checked my clothes with my left hand. I heaved a sigh of relief. My head hurt a bit. It must have been from the anxiety and my low blood pressure. You're smitten, Takako. And that's a perfect stopping point. Oh, wow, yeah. That's a perfect stopping point. Wow. Perfect timing. Aww. They're so cute as kids. Save? Right there. Interesting. We didn't get a new tips. We didn't get new tips. Usually we get new tips whenever we finish a chapter, but not that time. Unless they popped up. Nope, didn't. Dang it, okay, well. That was SeaBed, everybody. Just finished chapter 3. Okay. I will not be back next week because I am going on a quick trip. But I will be continuing my playthrough of SeaBed, a Yuri visual novel, 2 Sundays from now. Let me just go ahead and make a note that the next day that I do this will be episode 9. Yeah, cool. So, I have really enjoyed this story. I still have a lot more questions, but at this point, I'm just sort of sitting back, relaxing, and enjoying the journey. Maybe I'll understand it later. Anyway, shout out to the lurkers. Thanks everyone for being here. Shout out to everyone watching this on YouTube after the fact. On behalf of East Asia Soft, I have been Skull. Have yourselves a great day and a great week, and I will see you all next time when I come back on Tuesday to play, wait for it, Tricky Thief. See you all then. Bye, everybody.